Hey Grace Church, Michael Campbell here, family pastor, wanting to go over this Sunday's lesson, how it applies to the children, how it applies to us as primary disciple makers, and as we head into Baptism Sunday and what this represents. And so this Sunday, we're actually going through Peter worshiping God, and we can see this story in Luke chapter 5. And so how do we be proactive as guardians and adults for our children and homes? But the gospel records dozens of descriptions of the works that Jesus did, and we learn about how he served, he saved, and showed his power in miraculous ways for the sake of revealing his divine authority to his disciples and others around him. Yet even with all of the astounding works of Jesus that are described through Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the gospels still don't contain the whole of all that Jesus did. In fact, the Gospel of John actually finishes with saying, and these are many of the other things which Jesus did, which if I would have written all of them down, I don't even think the world itself could contain all the books. That's John 21:25, which is one of my favorite things because it's just like a junk drawer of, hey, he did so much more. And knowing that in several moments throughout the Gospels, we find Jesus' work stacked on top of one another in such a way that we can see the magnitude of his miracles and his works and power and teaching. And one of those chapters is in Luke 5. And so in just 39 verses, we see how Jesus provided, healed, forgave, called, taught. An account ought to stir our hearts toward a deeper love and worship for Jesus. And when reading a chapter like Luke 5, two types of questions come into mind. First, being when you think about Jesus, what do you believe about what he has done and how he continues to work? Like, do you find yourself only convinced of what you've experienced personally, him doing in your own life? Or do you limit yourself to believing only what you can imagine as possible? Or do you trust with confidence all that the Bible describes in Jesus' works? Second, does reading that about those works cause you to overflow with this deep worship? Like, do you respond to the teaching of these accounts and seeing Jesus' work with mild acknowledgement or grand astonishment that leads our heart and love to worship him even more? What is it in us that causes our hearts to be drawn to God? What is it that causes us worship? The discovery of the amazing works of Jesus ought to lead us to finding the answers to these questions. If it doesn't, spend time praying and asking God to change your perspective, soften your hearts, and draw you to himself. We see in Psalm chapter 42, as a deer pants for water, so my soul thirsts for you. Is there a desperate understanding that going to his word and his truth gives us nourishment in life, but also gives us healing in the times of pain and uncertainty? And so these are some of the topics we're going through like this week in our classes. So you'll notice in the rest of the thread, questions, memory verses, topics to go over as a family to continue this conversation, not only preparing the hearts as they enter, but also going into the following week and how we can apply it to our lives. But till next time, God bless and take care.